Welcome to IGDA Foundation's Play It Forward Trans Inclusion in Gaming panel. I'm Asif Khan. I'm CEO, Editor-in-Chief of Shacknews.com, and I have assembled a panel of very special guests to speak about this very important topic that I think deserves more attention. I'm really appreciative that we're dedicating this amount of time of our stream to this topic, and that we can highlight folks in the video game industry and their experiences. So let's just start introducing everyone. We have Diane Cochran here from Improbable, but you're also a Blizzard alum, right?
Yep. Was a Blizzard for about 9 years, so I was like a year away from getting my shield, but decided to take a little break, and then I'm now back with Improbable, helping them with some interesting stuff.
And we have Caden Jensen from Rooster Teeth and the internet, right?
Yeah, I've been around for a while. I've been with Rooster Teeth for the past 7 years. I work with Inside Gaming, but I also do a lot of voice acting for animated series. I was recently added to a mobile game as a voice actress as well. So I'm all over the place doing a lot of different stuff.
I saw a tweet from you where you were doing this like villain voice for your Twitch chat. It was solid work.
Thank you.
And then also joining us, Jay Collins. Thank you. If you can let the folks know where they might know you from.
Sure. Yeah, I think most people know me from my time with the federal government. So I previously led game-based education policy for the Obama administration, and then into the Trump administration as well. Now I run a startup focused on games education and equity.
Awesome. No, so thank you all so much for being here today. This is, I think, an emerging topic outside of gaming, but I think because we're more connected to the internet than your average demographic. Gamers are on social media. We react to trends, and I think more recently that activism has occurred in our industry, especially on the streamer influencer front. So I think it's really it's cool that we can kind of come here from 3 different angles really today to talk about trans inclusion in gaming, from the dev standpoint, from the content creation standpoint, from the infrastructure standpoint. So Caden, I kind of just curious, how long have you been streaming for, or how long have you been kind of in the scene, and how has it evolved? How's your experience kind of evolved over that time?
Oh, wow. I've been doing this since I was 15. That was when I got my first published article on a website oh so long ago. And since then, it's been quite the journey, I should say. And over the past couple of years, after coming out and, becoming myself, it's been difficult, to say the least. And I put that as mildly as I can, because it's not easy. I laid a lot of groundwork before I came out and transitioned, because I knew that I would have an uphill battle. And when I finally did come out and I finally, was able to fundamentally be who I am, everything I had built pretty much fell apart. It was watching a castle crumble in a day. And seeing that happen for myself, I did feel bad for me. I mean, it seems mistakenly so that I wouldn't. But more than that, over the past, couple of years, I've realized it hasn't changed. I mean, nothing has fundamentally made any difference since, since I came out and since anyone before me has done anything in years like for the industry, it's all very much the same stuff over and over again. You know, somebody does all their due diligent work, then they finally feel confident in themselves. They come out and then everything just shatters. It's wash, rinse, repeat. It's not just my story. It's so many other people's stories. And having that ability to take a look at it and look backwards. And I mean, hey, hindsight is 2020 in a lot of ways right now. Taking a look at everything, now we have a fundamental. We have eyes. For better or worse, we have eyes on a lot of different aspects of the industry, and inclusion is the biggest forefronter for any of this. And looking back at, again, my own experiences in coming out, is like, I don't want that to ever happen to anybody else again. I mean, whether you're living as your true self now, or you're planning to do it soon, or years down the line, or you haven't even, you know, had your egg cracked yet, then, you know, you shouldn't have to give up everything that you worked for up until that point and be forced to rebuild from the ground up. You still did that work. It's still you doing everything. And now, you know, to have the additional task of, well, now we're going to have to make you prove it again, all over again, though nothing has changed with your skill set. It's the biggest flaw that I could point at.
No, that's really some amazing points you make there, and I appreciate the courage that it took to go through that journey. And there's that internal happiness that can be reached from making these decisions. But like you said, there's professional considerations where, especially when you're an influencer, when you're a streamer, when you're a content creator, so much is wrapped up in your identity to your fans. So when your identity changes, your fan base has to kind of, you get to know your fan base even more, I think.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. It's like you learn a lot about the people who have been following you in that moment where you're going to be, again, more authentically you than you honestly could learn about yourself. I mean, you've already been on that journey for yourself for a while, and now you're confident in being who you are publicly. And then you start learning about the people around you. And there's still so much to learn after that initial, I'm here. And then the learning continues.
Mm-hmm. No, and I, just on the theme of inclusion, I think it's important to know, like, I'm not a trans individual. I'm a regular cis male here. But yeah, I am a minority. I'm a Muslim American. I don't like seeing people treated like unequally, just period. And I think that's why I am so motivated to help fight for trans rights, is that it's not like it's said frequently, but trans rights are human rights. I strongly believe that it's not like your career shouldn't be judged any differently, like based on what you've decided to do. And I just think it's right now, what we're seeing is a nexus of things, a nexus of inequality, wealth disparity, racial disparity, and LGBTQ plus rights. Hell, women's rights in a lot of states when it comes to abortion laws that are being changed. So I feel like that trans rights are part of a larger message of solidarity, that we need to care about all people and all. You know, it's not that all lives matter nonsense, but that literally every human has rights, you know, and that includes the trans community. And I think that it's sad that there's still so much suffering specifically in this community, and that it's still, like you said, over just the past few years, that there's still a struggle for trans people, not just in the gaming industry, but everywhere, you know, especially in the US. Diane, I kind of want to ask you just about your experience, you know, because you've been in the industry for a while, and game dev is frequently described as a boys' club. Now, I know Blizzard might be a little different. You know, it's an OC and all these things. I'm curious, did you run into that kind of any kind of pushback like that when you were early on in your dev experience? And just how would you describe that, like, early on experience?
Okay, well, I can describe like two different parts of things because, yeah, I've been a software dev now for a little over 2 decades, and Blizzard was about half of that, or maybe about a third, right? But much like Caden said, like one of the first major projects that I ended up doing as a software developer turned into a United Nations like standard. And normally that would be a gold standard, like you put that on your resume and you're kind of set, right? Except that I transitioned right after that happened. So for the next 5 years or so, as I was going through jobs, I had this major thing that I could never talk about because if they went to go like check references, suddenly it'd be like, no, we don't know who this person is at all, right? And so yes, there's this thing of like you kind of have to hide a lot of stuff as you're reestablishing yourself after transitioning on things, and that's kind of like one half of that question that you're asking. But the time at Blizzard, yes, gaming is a bit of a boys' club. Not gonna lie, I've had times where we were doing a company outing and suddenly somebody's like, "Let's go to the titty bar," and nobody thought that was weird, right? Yeah, I know. And thankfully, like that sort of thing is changing, right? And has changed a lot. Particularly due to the activism that people have been doing in recent years. Thankfully, with my time at Blizzard, I never particularly felt held back. That was one of the things that was actually fairly nice. My time there, I got to work on a lot of like fun and interesting things. They were all very visible things, and those things, like you hear the kind of normal problem of like accomplishments can get taken away from women, right? Or things can get kind of buried in like, oh, well, it was the team who did that sort of stuff. Thankfully, a lot of that stuff didn't happen to me directly. And in the cases where like I would start to see that stuff happen at Blizzard, like I could actually fight for that stuff. Um, and that was the part that was like, I guess really good for me is watching Blizzard become a much more inclusive company, even beyond what it was and known for within the gaming industry. Due to some of the work of getting like more senior women into leadership positions and setting up diversity councils and having like an open LGBT group, those sorts of things. So yeah, it's been kind of interesting. So.
And Jay, I don't know if you, I kind of want to move this away from just the industry, but also the medium itself. I don't know if you saw yesterday, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remaster announced that there's going to be a trans skater included in the roster. But if you could speak to how important it is not just to have trans people maybe as content creators or as devs, but also positive images in the medium itself, how important that is.
Sure. I think, so I come from a educator background, right? So I used to teach high school game design and looked a lot at pipeline, both in policy work and at the educator level. We used to do this activity where we'd look at a game and we'd try and kind of look at the character, look at the avatar and figure out what was trying to be said by that, right? What is the game designer's intent? Who was the game designer if we can figure it out from the character or the avatar? Because sometimes it's a little linked to their own personal things, especially for indie games. And I remember this one time I was working with a 14-year-old girl of color, and we were looking at a game. I won't name it, but you have a protagonist that looks kind of like Indiana Jones, more or less. And I'm like, all right, so what do you see? What do you see when you look at this character? And she was like, person. And I was like, okay, what else? I'm like, generic person. What else? It's a general human being. This is who it is, default human being. And I'm like, okay, maybe skin color or something, right? She's like, oh yeah, white, I guess, man, middle-aged, American, heterosexual, cisgender, right? And this isn't something that she had, I think, thought about, right? It had been so internalized in her over so long. And it's honestly kind of heartbreaking. I taught at an all-girls school that included trans and GNC students, and their first games, so many of them middle-aged white men protagonists, and it's just because that's the default, you know. That's who we are in the gaming industry. So I think representation is huge for these kids. It's huge for the industry, but I don't think I want to throw a word of caution here, because you know, you see this in TV and film, and with the series Transparent, right? They're like, this is great. We got a really well-known male actor to wear a dress, and that's trans, right? I said, no, hold on here, okay?
Yeah.
You're making trans characters, and you got a bunch of cis people working on it. That's not quite what we're looking for, right? I don't need to see my life, and these kids don't need to see their lives through yet another pair of white cis middle-aged men's eyes. Like, I love y'all, but you know, there needs to be some more opportunities there. There needs to be more representation from within the field, and I think there's a whole lot of diversity. Honestly, I think there's a whole lot of gender and sexual diversity in the field. And I think that there's a lot of fear, and I think that there's a lot of just feeling like, why would I even bother trying to express that to my coworkers right now, because I know how much of a backlash it's going to be.
No, that's a really good point. And yeah, like you said, there's so many just default characters in video games that are that description you're talking about. So you don't have to say a specific game. You just described like 100 thousands of games just now.
It's a white guy with no hair and a goatee.
He's angry.
Every game.
I mean, a lot of I don't want to even single out any individual platform, but yeah, that's definitely a problem. It's something that even Hollywood, outside of just trans representation, but minority representation, has caught flack with recently. You've seen The Simpsons have this huge overhaul in the people of color characters who were voiced by white people. Those people are pulling back. You saw the Cleveland show, the same thing happen. So it's like these very, very slowly happening victories. But I think at least the creators of the art are starting to understand that element of it. Maybe not as much in the trans community yet, but I think having an actual trans skateboarder in a Tony Hawk game, like that's what you're talking about, right, Jay?
Again, it depends on the intent. It depends on who made it, but it's better than nothing. But I don't want to settle for that either. No,
obviously not. But I think like we're starting to see just like a little crack in that the white man is in, you know, the lead character in the adventure game.
Don't tweet me on that. Don't tweet.
I'd actually like to chime in on that too. I mean, it's the point of, you know, yeah, there is a fact of like having a character is a great thing. It is fantastic, and there's no reason to diminish that. But because of course there's a but. The thing is it really does boil down to intent, and honestly taking a look at who's making these decisions and why, because there's a lot of reactionary stuff happening right now. Yes, you can say that you're an ally. You can say that you're here for Black Lives Matter. You can say that you're here for trans rights. You're here for women's rights. You're here for inclusion. But if you don't know why yourself, if you don't know why it's important, and if you don't listen in the effort to, you know, why it's so important to have this done properly in all of your mediums, whether it be games or animation or Hollywood, it doesn't matter. If you're not doing it with proper intent, then you're just being reactionary and you're just kind of cashing in on clout, which is unnecessary. I mean, I've seen, and I'm sure everybody can chime in on this, anytime that there is a trans character included in a game, more often than not, unless it's an indie game, you're going to end up with something that is, well, the writing's going to be a little ham-fisted, and, you know, much to the chagrin of everyone akin to Transparent, you're going to get a cis actor playing a trans woman or a trans man, and it just, it becomes incredibly complicated when you don't know the reasons why the stories are important. And in that same vein, there's also the case of, well, every part of it has to be positive. It has to be positive because if it's not positive, then people are going to hate it. It's like, there's nuances to every story. Suffering happens. It's true. It's true to life. It's true to fantasy. It's true to everything. You watch everybody's favorite, shows. I mean, you take a look at Game of Thrones and the whole thing is a tragedy. Nobody's happy. And that's kind of how things work. But you take a look at it from the perspective of these characters and who they are and who they fundamentally, want to be and who they strive to be and what they want to do. They're characters with their own agency and their own dreams and hopes. And you have to think about it this is fourth dimensional chess we're playing here. It's not just, a flat 2D character. Nobody is just, a flat 2D person. There is more nuance to everything. And again, being beaten down through, Hollywood and animation and games with generic white male protagonist who saves princess and does good, fights bad guy, wins the day, gets a kiss. I played that game 100,000 times. Everybody's played that game 100,000 times. That's an easy game to make, and it's an easy game to produce and cash in on. It's time to be a little bit more volatile. It's time to be a little bit more, nuanced with our characters and, the designs of them and, who's writing them and who's voicing them and everything in between. There's a lot of questions to ask and a lot of questions to answer. And if it's you just doing a performative act by being like, we have a trans, we have a person of color, and that's the end of your statement, you need to be doing better.
Yeah, kind of carrying that maybe a little bit further is, if you think of media, that's where a lot of our, I guess, fictional role models, our aspirational selves, those sorts of things come from. And if all of those things are from, the cis white male view, trans people exist, right? Obviously, trans people exist, but where are the trans role models? Where are the people that, me as a child can look at and go, oh, wait, that's who I want to be, right? I can find rough analogs there, but having that direct representation is hugely important, right? Like I think of something like, let's say, Will and Grace for the gay community as like the show that treated gay people, very respectfully, right? It like the jokes that were in the situational comedy wasn't, oh, hey, look, there's a gay person and watch them like do stupid gay things. It was actually like, here's a gay life and, here's the funny situations that can kind of come out of this. We need those sorts of representations for all sorts of diverse people, which, since this is the trans panel, I'm going to say, including trans people. And that's the sort of thing that I'm really hoping for, is that we start getting those trans voices into gaming who are creating games, who are creating content for trans people initially, right? And then hopefully other people can, look at this and go, okay, I think I can understand a little bit more. I can empathize a little bit better. I can understand those sorts of situations in a way that just like hearing a story, you kind of can't do.
And Caden, you brought up a really interesting point early on in your point about profit motive and how they're just sometimes they might be motivated to do this just to check a box, and that there's still a profit motive behind this. Do you think that, and I can put this out to the whole panel, do you think that the profit motive of game companies, for instance, is more often than not a roadblock to inclusion? Is that a dumb question?
No, it's a perfect question. And the fundamental answer is super simple. If you're big business, let's just say, we have Johnny Big Business here. Johnny Big Business wants to make a game and takes a look. It's just like, well, games have, generic white male protagonists and so on and so forth. Take a look at the actual percentages of the people of the world. Take a look at how diverse everything actually is. Now, again, from a business perspective, if you're only catering to one type of person, then you're only going to get that one type of person's money. There are so many people out there, and you could honestly, and this is the simple fact, you could be making so much more money if you were actually genuinely inclusive with all of your content, because then you're reaching more people. You know, so everybody's talking about, oh, you know, quarter losses and this and that and the other things. It's like, okay, I can tell you why, you know, because there's a pandemic going on. That's okay. Well, let's think outside the box for a minute. What markets haven't you tapped? What markets haven't you tapped properly and with actual thought involved? Take a step back and actually look at all of that and realize you've been catering to about 20% of the 100% of the world. And there is another 80% that you could be tapping into if you, one, take a look at what your business fundamentals are, and two, what inclusion can do for you on top of actually being something that we all need. You know, there is a money motivator there for, you know, for the top brass, because if you can't make it profitable, then what's the point? And I disagree with that sentiment entirely, but I do understand it and why, you know, it doesn't work. It's like, well, we tried it once and it didn't work. It's like, because you tried it half-assed. That's why it didn't work. It's, you know, it's like we added a trans character. And okay, so how many times did you misgender the trans character? Well, we did it constantly so that everybody knew it was a trans character. It's like, well, there's strike one. Did you dead name the trans character? Oh yeah, we did that so that we could show that there was, you know, a person before and a person after. It's like, there's strike two. All right. Did you ask them what was in their pants? Yeah, we had to make the point of, and strike three, you're out of here. We don't want it. So you have to actually think about it. There's nuance. Again, it's like a character is a character for a reason. And a person is a person for a reason. There's a story to be told. And if you tell it properly, you're going to make a lot of people happy, and you'll introduce people to a whole new world that they never would have thought of before. We learn from media. We do. You know, you learn about other people's struggles. You learn about who they are from different authors, from different game devs, from different filmmakers. You learn about them fundamentally through what they tell on the screen or on the page. And we need to see that more in games. We need to see that more in the entire industry, because it's a great way to learn, because it's fun. People love learning with fun. If you can make something fun to enjoy and to experience, then, you know, you'll teach things far better than any, you know, textbook can.
Yeah, and I think it's also just, you know, for someone who isn't trans, I think playing a game that actually represented trans people properly would be educational, and it would help with inclusion, because it would educate the people who are stuck playing the white cis male roles in every game, and they'd be like, hey, here's something different. I think the reason I brought up profitability is that these companies, like, they've become monolithic. They're a lot of them are, you know, billion-dollar companies with billion-dollar franchises, and they don't take a whole lot of risk. And I think that they view this as a risk. And I think what we need to do is explain to them, no, it's diversification. You know, like you're appealing to different people, and you're like you said, it's about broad. Like, I know how these guys think, these money guys. They look at total addressable market and like analytics and like all these things, but I think that it's bigger than that. Like you said, we need inclusion as a human race so badly that, like, media, it has a role in this. It has a responsibility in this. And I don't think any of us would say that they're doing a good job right now of that.
Yeah, one of the things that was, I guess, rather nice working at Blizzard is in most of the things that I saw, right? I can't really speak for everybody else. Blizzard was always focused on, like, how to make an awesome game first and then how to make money afterwards, right? And I think Overwatch actually did a really good job of showing how that can, like, be different, right? Because Overwatch was like, yeah, we're going to be really diverse, and we're not doing it to, like, pander to people. We're doing it because we think it tells good stories, and because we want to see all of these various characters in all of these different ways. And that seemed to be grounded within Overwatch all the way from the very beginning. and isn't driven by like forced diversity, wasn't driven by like profit motives, was really just driven by the own internal like drive and determination of the game team itself. And one of the things that I keep hoping for is to watch other games now look at Overwatch and go, oh wait, no, we can make really diverse games and people actually end up loving that stuff, so yay, right? And I know it'll take a while, but hopefully that can show that you can make, a multi-million or multi-billion-dollar blockbuster game that actually has like decent representation.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a really good point. And Blizzard, I would say like this is something that as a Muslim American I noticed, but they added sprays for Ramadan. They weren't like Ramadan branded, but there was a feast and a fast. Like there were two different sprays that they had that happened to launch the week of Eid. So it was a big deal for the Muslim community. Like we're like, hey, like they actually did something for us. And I do think that there are devs out there that do look to communities and do look to do even little things like that go a long way. And like a series of little things like that can make an entertainment property super inclusive. And it's like, it doesn't, it's just, it's funny because like we're begging corporations to just be decent, like a lot of the time. And I think that's the challenge here is like, not every company has that motivation. And in the video game industry, especially, there's some companies over in Asia who think very differently about representation than even American devs do. So I think that there's a lot more that we can do across the board there. But no, this is, I think Overwatch is a very good example of a game that hit critical mass and was super inclusive. But it could be more inclusive still, right?
Yep. I mean, things can always be better, right?
That's why we're getting Overwatch 2. Maybe.
Hey, I don't work at Blizzard anymore. So.
I know. No, I know. You're I think it's a good point that not every studio out there, I would hope, like some of them think about making a fun game, some of them think about the story, some of them think about the world first. But there are some third-party developers out there where it really just feels like it's Mega Game 2, Mega Game Black Ops, Mega Game 3, and so on.
Yeah, I think a lot of those things, come about as you probably know. A lot of these large games, they're analytics driven, right? It's we're going to be investing hundreds of $1 million into this game. We need to get hundreds of $1 million back out. So we're going to do things that analytics tells us are going to be a successful property. And I think for a lot of the diversity and inclusion initiatives, there's no analytics, right? There's so few companies that are doing those things. And there's nothing that you can point out that goes, hey, by making this game more inclusive, it made X dollars more, right? And until we get more of those sorts of games that we can create those analytics, there's always going to be this back pressure against those AAA studios in order to be able to go make content like that, right? That's bringing it back to Overwatch. That's why, like, to me, Overwatch is really important, is because it is a major AAA blockbuster game that started to set a new standard that other people are now starting to emulate because they have the analytics to go like, oh wait, no, Overwatch did this, and when they announced, Tracer was gay, this happened, and it seems like sales increased, and these things started to occur with it. And I think as there's more data points, as the industry starts to shift, those are always going to be the tail end, but those things will start to shift too.
Mm-hmm. I kind of want to bring up just another part of this part of inclusion, part of this discussion that I don't think we've really hit on yet. But the trans community gets targeted a lot online, and gaming, especially in gaming, or in Twitch chat, wherever. The internet can be a very mean place, and the gaming community can be especially vicious. And I'll put this out to everyone on the panel again, but what do you think as a community, devs, content creators, the platforms themselves, what can we do? And this might be broader than just trans inclusion. This might just be about being a nice person on the internet, but what can we do to encourage people to not be so vicious? You know, like, what is, like, you know, like, because I feel that, like, as a brown person on the internet, I get hate. Or if I tweet trans rights stuff, I lose followers. Well, I don't care. To hell with those followers. But, like, you know, there's obviously, I think even there have been stand-up comedians who have targeted the trans community. It feels like still right now in 2020, the trans community is targeted online more than most people, and it leads to mental health issues. It leads to depression. It leads to god awful things like suicide. What can we do? What should we do? What can we do to stop this, or at least change things, change the direction of things?
I'd say, from my perspective at least, start with the kids. I think the kids are all right. You know, I remember growing up in high school, and a Catholic high school, and even the idea of being like gay, which, you know, I mean, Will and Grace was around. Even that was enough to, you know, not great situation with the nuns. And then, you know, walking in as a teacher, I cannot believe how different it is. You know, someone stands up on stage and says, "Hey, I'm 15 and I'm non-binary," and the entire school erupts in applause. Like, I can't imagine that type of welcoming. One of the initiatives that I'm part of over with a nonprofit called Games for Change is called Raising Good Gamers, where we take that question of, like, how do you reduce online toxicity? We actually kick it over to kids, you know, students, because they're the ones who are going to be filling in a lot of that space online over time. And a lot of them have those values. So if you start with them and you start talking to them about how they work with their peer groups, I think that can be really powerful. But I do think it's something that we have to focus on. I don't know if the industry understands how much damage it does when you know, I don't know if I'm allowed to say the G word, but when Gamergate hit the first time, you know, President Obama was getting all kinds of phone calls, and those phone calls were from universities, and they were saying, we've seen this much % drop in our computer science programs from women. And they weren't looking at the rest of us, you know. They were just looking at cis women mostly, but I have to imagine it was similar. And when you start seeing that, it becomes self-selecting. You get this homogenous group of people saying, games are for me, I'm destined to be a game developer, I'm going to guide the industry, and it becomes a repeat. If you can start filling that pipeline with different folks and starting with them when they're in high school and saying, you don't have to leave, you know, there's a place for you here, I think you're going to see the change over time. The folks who are already 30 or 40, you know, and cussing people out online and using slurs, I don't know if it's worth our time going back to them, but there's something to be said for the younger folks.
No, it's a really good point, Jay, that you make, that we're at this, it's a generational thing where the younger generation is more accepting, but I do fear that, you know, the red states still have young people too, and their parents might not be as inclusive as others. You know, so it's I do think that there does need to be something done about those 30-year-olds too, that maybe they could just not, you know, I run a forum. I run a forum online. You know, it's a 24-year-old community, and I think when I took over in 2014, I did add, you know, 2014 was Gamergate, right? One of those years. We added something specifically about misogyny and attacking people's gender identity and also people's religion. It was like these three things that we added to the community guidelines because they weren't there. People didn't think about it when they created the community guidelines in 1996. But the discourse had become overwhelmingly toxic towards women and LGBTQ people in that era. And it was something that I specifically sat down with our moderators and we talked about, how do we address this on our community? I wish other online communities did things like that. I know that it's really tough to moderate a Twitch chat, for instance. But Caden, like, you must have some awesome moderators or people that you work with that like make sure that as much of that toxicity is pushed aside, right? Because like you talked about in the past few years having to deal with this during your transition. Could you speak to how important like having a community around you was for that?
So one of the many, many hats I've worn in my tenure at Rooster Teeth was a community manager, on top of being a producer and a host and showrunner and a million other things. But being a part of the community management team and still being very close to the current community management team, because I'm so ingrained in what we do, it's very much something, it's like blowing this up even past, just what I'm doing and everything like that. You take a look at the platform itself, and that's where things kind of get hazy. Is there are community guidelines on every website. You mentioned restructuring your own,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to understand what needs to fundamentally change, and that's a step that the platform can take. It's an important step that the platform should take, and you see a lot of reform in that going forward. I mean, over the past couple of months, a lot of companies have taken a look at those certain aspects of, well, how are we engaging with our community, and taking a better, finer look at them. And then they do one thing and then they stop. And it speaks again to, and I'll bring it up in this capacity. There was recently a social media post saying that, hey, we're here to support our content creators of color. And there were 2 in the video, and the rest were all very white.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we're listening to our community and the voices of people of color. And it's like, there are like 15 white people in this and 2 people of color. And you go to those, platforms, and you see what their most promoted, content creators are. And they are very much to mirror the game industry and the games and the protagonists of them. They are straight white male. And it's like they're straight white cis male, content creators playing those type of games. And it's not like our industry is small, and it's not like our industry isn't diverse already. It's just not inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. Is the diversity's there. You don't even have to look for it. You take a look. I can find a bunch of trans streamers on Twitch right now. I can find a bunch of them. Are any of them necessarily successful? No. And do you want to know why? It's because there is a fundamental lack of support from the platform itself. Because again, going all the way back to it, it's like, well, show us the data points where it makes us profitable. Show it where it makes a big deal to us. Why do we care? It's like, we're already making our money. We're already doing our things. And it's like, education is one part, but unless we're educating in mass and in ways that, again, are just like, to Jay's point, the kids are fine. The kids are great. The kids are open-minded. The kids are ready. The younger generation, they're fantastic. I mean, they know what they're doing. They have a good fundamental idea of, things should be better. And to be honest, I'm pretty sure when all of us were a little bit younger, we were thinking the exact same things. Things should be better. So yeah, there are definitely the, late 30s, 40s, 50s crowd who are still very much knee deep in the rhetoric, but people still have a willingness to learn. They have a willingness to change, and so whether they like it or not, the world is changing. So they're going to have to learn. And the better ways to learn are to, have them see it, have them experience it in a positive way through the mouthpiece of, the people who are experiencing it. And we're talking on the grand scale of inclusion. It's like, we're talking trans rights, we're talking Black Lives Matter, we're talking everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the platform itself it's like, if the platform itself isn't doing its due diligence to support these people, then there's not going to be any fundamental change. And that goes all the way back to, you know, the developers and education and the rights of people in our entire country. And it boils down to things. I mean, we're talking, you know, explicitly in media here, but this is a whole world thing.
Mm-hmm.
But how people learn and how people deal with things better is, you know, it's like, here's the experience. We're going to show it to you. You're going to listen to somebody. I mean, it's like, how many times have we seen the joke on Twitter? It was just like, welcome to my TED Talk. And, you know, it's like, yeah, I mean, people digest that content. And honestly, I think the key point is that those higher ups who are making those decisions, who run those platforms, they need to actually probably listen to a couple of those TED Talks and actually take that information, ingest it, and understand why it's important to be supporting diversity and supporting inclusion rather than, you know, slapping a "we did it" bumper sticker on a video, pushing it out there, and then, you know, getting completely destroyed on social media because, you know, doing 2 weeks of work isn't going to cut it.
Mm-hmm. Or you mean just having your logo be rainbow for a month doesn't solve anything?
Oh yeah, you know, don't forget, you know, make your icon blacked out for 30 days, and then you know what? You've solved racial inequality. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, it's I didn't mean to be flippant there, but so many companies like they do lip service to disenfranchised communities, and then it's on to the next one. You know, and
everybody gets a month, and that's it. Your month is over. We're on to the next one.
Or, you know, even the thing of like, hey, we had a banner at a pride parade, right? Like, so, you know, oh, we totally support, you know, LGBT rights because we had a banner. And it's like, no, you show that you support those things by day-to-day involvement, by having things change and not having them be a big deal, right? Because if you're putting out like, oh my God, look, we marched in a parade, or we had, you know, the logo change, you know, that's the extent of the involvement that you're willing to like put into, and that isn't enacting change. That's just riding coattails, right?
Yeah. No, I don't mean to champion any one specific company, but there is a CEO of a Fortune 500 company who's openly gay. His name's Tim Cook, and he runs Apple. And out of a lot of these major companies, they are, I don't know if you watched their most recent WWDC presentation. They had a lot of different presenters from a lot of different cultures and a lot of different backgrounds, and I think that they're mindful of it. At least there's some companies that are mindful of inclusion, versus others that clearly have their head in the sand still. But clearly, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but for me, the basic level of effort for me is that if you're a trans person on my website, I don't want you to feel any different than anyone else. Like you should be treated the same way, and you have the same rights as any other user. So like that's just the least that, like you said, that's the bare minimum that you can do. But it is, you know, when you are running like a living, breathing community, it is about enforcing that too. So like Twitch will say these things about Black Lives Matter, but then you'll see what happens in Twitch chats of Black streamers, or in your own streams. Like what you know, when you see, I don't know if you've ever been invaded. I got invaded during E3 by some very racist people, and I was interviewing an Asian woman, and it was me on camera, and they were saying all sorts of horrible things in the chat, and it was hundreds of people. You know, like they coordinate these things, you know, in those dark sectors of the internet, and then they actually will straight up attack you. The platform needs to do more. I agree with you, Caden. Like that's something that I wish these companies would get through their heads. And you know, right now there's a congressional oversight meeting with Apple, Google, Amazon, and Facebook about, it's mainly about antitrust and money, but it really, at the end of the day, it's about how much power these companies have now. They're so massive. And even in the video game industry, you know, Activision Blizzard's like $70 billion company, or EA's huge. It's not like, I think the argument the video game industry used to have is, oh, we're a little video game industry, we don't have any money. No, you're the largest grossing company. Like entertainment industry in the world now. You like, and that's why I think it's important that we highlight this and we talk about trans inclusion in gaming, because the games industry is so connected online, and our viewers, our readers, everything, like our listeners, they're so connected that we can mobilize better than other industries if we have solidarity. But that's the key to me, is like every disenfranchised group coming together and saying, I got your back. Because it's about equality deep down for me. And I think that's the message of this panel, but that's like, I think what needs to be understood by these mega corporations, that it is about everyone. It is about that blue ocean. You're going to include more people in your platform. I don't know. Hopefully this panel will serve as evidence for them, and we can come back and be like, hey, look at this panel a year ago. We were right. But no, I appreciate you all taking the time out of your days. I know everyone's busy, and this pandemic has us all working from home, scrambling around, doing a bunch of conference calls and whatnot. But I think this is a super important issue. Obviously, it's bigger than just 1 hour of a discussion can solve. But I think we've highlighted some really key areas for people to think about. I guess just because there's, I try to think about our viewers. I try to think about who's going to be watching this. And there might be someone out there who's struggling with their gender identity right now, is not comfortable, with their family situation or something. Having gone through the transition, is there any advice that you could give people, any words of encouragement or anything to someone out there who might be struggling right now?
I would say going into that tunnel of transition seems really tough and daunting. But the light at the end of it and the life after is so much better. Finally being able to be yourself, to be comfortable in who you are, to have the world make sense is worth almost everything, at least from my personal point of view.
That's great. And I was on that boat when you got engaged. It was so super adorable. We have a community event back before the pandemic. It was an every year thing called ShackCon, and we were in New Orleans on a riverboat, right?
Yep.
It was
sunset cruise on a riverboat.
It was.
Had my fiance propose to me in front of a whole bunch of Shacknews people.
It was adorable. But yeah, no, this has been great. I guess I should do some shout outs for you folks. Where can people find you or find your work?
I'm on roosterteeth.com. I'm there all the time. You can check out Inside Gaming on YouTube. You can check out roosterteeth.com. We stream all the time on RTTV. It's free. There's tons of content, podcasts, let's plays, all sorts of stuff going on. Inside Gaming, daily news show. We have our Send News podcast every week, and we have a ton of different features going up all the time. You can find me personally on Twitter, and it's just my name, @Caden Jensen.
Sweet. Jay, do you have any plugs that you like to shout out to, or just messages for the folks?
Yeah, I usually prefer to promote my students and kids out there. So I'd say, if you're not, a huge thing for me is making sure to pay interns, pay students, invite diverse candidates to do these things, because it's the only way they get into the industry, whatever industry it is, to be honest, but gaming too. So if you're out there, I'll just use this time to say, make sure you're promoting to queer spaces for these things, for fellowships, for internships. That's what we need. We need more of those students to see that they're open and welcome.
No, that's a great sentiment. Diane, do you have anything you want to shout out or plug? Or
I'll plug Shacknews for you.
Oh, you're the best.
Yeah, Shacknews. No. It's a really great community. Talking about trans inclusion. I've been there for 15 years now. It's always been a very open and welcoming space for me. You know, I've been involved in numerous trans discussions. A lot of the community is always there to back me up. It's pretty awesome to have a place where like I feel like I could be myself, which was especially interesting given that like I wasn't open during my time at Blizzard. I was effectively stealth, but there I was on Shacknews if anybody bothered to go look, and you know, and like that's how wonderful that particular group is. So if you want a great group of gamers to talk about everything under the sun, Shacknews.
Yeah, shacknews.com/chatty is our forum. It's been around. It was called the Shacknews commenting system back in like 24 years ago, but it's evolved. It looks like Reddit, except the threads expire. So it's weird. It's definitely a special place. Obviously, I like it. I'm biased though. Got a Shack logo behind me. No, I really appreciate all you folks taking the time out today. This was a wonderful discussion, and it's like I said, this is the highlight of my Play It Forward stream. This is the panel that I got to head, that I got to spearhead. I really appreciate you folks being a part of this. I hope we can do this again, because I think that this is a topic that we should continue to discuss, kind of look at what progress we can make, what we can do better, and how we can work together. You know, all of our, as individuals, as companies, you know, I think there's a lot of potential collaborations that we could do to help trans people become more visible in our industry, in the world. And no, this was a really great experience. I appreciate all of you for taking the time out today.
Yeah, and thanks for setting it up. Right,
No.
like you didn't have to.
Thanks for having
us. I jumped on this opportunity because, like I said, I may not be trans. I may have no intention ever to become be a trans person or anything. But at the end of the day, I care about people. I want. I feel a connection to any disenfranchised group, and I think that part of inclusion, part of solidarity right now, especially during a pandemic, we truly need solidarity as a human race right now to defeat this virus. And this message of inclusion is another part of that for me. And I come from, I have a background in the rave community. Like, I was really into electronic music, and the electronic music scene, LGBTQ people, it's no big deal. You know, we're all the same in that industry. And that's not, and I'm not dogging any other industry. I just think that when it comes to electronic music, we've been more open and accepting of people. It's kind of in our culture. So it's something that's been ingrained in me since I was a teenager. And it's such a pleasure to get to do this. So this has been the Trans Inclusion in Gaming panel here on the IGDA Foundation Play It Forward live stream. There's probably some more great content that's going to be coming up right after this, so stay tuned. Thank you so much, and we'll be right back with some more cool stuff.